Hey, welcome to the Default Profitable Podcast. You're listening to the next episode. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on what it takes to start, run, grow, and then restart, rerun, and regrow a business. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton, and today my guest is Daniel Herndon. Daniel, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I was trying to figure out, as I thought about today's conversation, how long I've known you. It's been a while.
Well, I can tell you, I don't know the year, but it was probably approximately 2009. No. Yes, 2009-ish. You were at Trust Point at the time, and you did a class for a group of people, and I was in that group of people.
Yeah. All right. Well, perfect. So, although you and I know each other, why don't you take 2 or 3 minutes and introduce yourself as a human to the people that are listening?
Yeah, well, you've all probably caught on that my name is Daniel Herndon. I'm a brand strategist, and since nobody knows what that means, I work with smart leaders and brand owners to help them to get crystal clear so that they can sell their product to regular people.
Okay. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. Yeah, I also occasionally collect a little bit of bourbon, play poker from time to time. I mean, I have other characteristics, but that's the
But
most
you're
important.
just going to stick with the brand strategist thing.
Yeah. It's the only
Yep.
way I can be mysterious.
All right. So, walk us through the history of starting your current company.
Great question. So I was in a rock band back in the early 2000s and traveled all over the country. I helmed some of the business aspects of our band. So every band, if it's going to do, if you're going to make a living, you have to treat it like a business. And so I managed all the booking and along with the rest of the band, we kind of just worked really hard to build um, a viable business so that we could do it for a living. And I had a lot of other artists approach me about uh, booking their shows, and I said, "Hey guys, it's not that simple. You don't just book shows. You have to create a whole image. You have to develop a plan and all this stuff." So but I saw an opportunity, knowing that rock and roll wasn't going to last forever. Um, that I saw an opportunity to help other bands to essentially develop their brand. I didn't call it that at the time, but I worked with a handful of artists, and I was pitching endorsement deals with these artists to companies, and that led to me landing a client because I saw an open door with a company that really just turned into my first client. And then I realized those guys had bigger bank accounts than the bands did.
Bigger bank accounts than a startup band?
Yeah, exactly. So I just essentially, it was around 2008 when I started in 2006, but in 2008 my business pivoted to just focusing on marketing services for companies.
Now, when you say pivoted, I guess, were you organized before then? Was it a side hustle when you were helping other bands and became a full-time gig? What do you mean by pivoted?
Yeah. So when I started the business, the intention was to be in the music industry and to identify revenue opportunities for musicians and make money doing it. So essentially, think of like a management company or a record label or the things that we always hear. But essentially, it's the revenue side of developing music and selling it. And that's because I had been doing that for myself, and um, and I wanted to be on the hammer side instead of the nail side. So I started helping other bands. And 2 years in, I was just like, I am just not hitting it to where I can really rely on this for my own income. I mean, it was I was um, as there was a period of time where the touring slowed down, and I hopped into a job that I had, uh, you know, started, in the early music days. I had started in this job that was my main income, but I considered it my side job and music as the main job. Um, but anyway, I hopped back into labor work, um, and I took Fridays off to focus on my business. I, literally went without income for at least 20% of the week to make sure that I had time to focus on building a business. Anyway, I just wasn't getting to where it was sustainable. And that's where, my eyes were open, and I just saw the opportunity to start working with just corporations. So the pivot was sort of like saying aha, and just deciding that I was going to change the services that I focused on.
So when you made that change, um, did did music go away, or did that?
Yeah, because I landed a client. We were doing grand opening events for gas stations, for a chain of gas stations. And there was a band at some of those events. So the music thing was sort of this attraction feature to what opened up that door, to work with this event planning company. And uh, at the end of the day, uh, they just needed marketing. So the music thing, just I just abandoned the music business entirely.
All right. So when you started to spin up the marketing business, how? So this is episode 140, and probably in 120 of the episodes, people have talked about the three things that you need to start a business.
Yep.
So the first is you've got to have a very well developed strategic plan. So when you
hmm
started your business, how well developed was your strategic plan?
I don't know if I even knew what those words were, so it wasn't developed at all. It
All
was
right. Well,
completely.
you fit in with pretty much everybody else that said you should have that. The second was they said you need at least 6 months of cash savings in the bank. So 6 months of cash savings in the bank when you started your business. I'm guessing you had that.
Nope.
Yeah, most
Nope. I
people
had
don't
$750.
actually. Although everybody says you should have it, most of the business owners have said, "Yeah, well, I didn't really have a plan or savings." I know you're supposed to have those. And then the third thing is a clear understanding of what you would sell and who you would sell it to. So a little bit different than a plan, really, so
Just yeah, actual sales clarity. No, I had none of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that of the 137 people that brought those things up, you match 136 of them because only one person so far has said, "Oh yeah, I had that." I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I had $750, and I said, I'm gonna start a business. So I bought a laptop, and that was it. Then I was a business owner. Um I I guess, the next day I was like, I think I probably need a bank account, but I'd like to have a check first. So I waited till I swindled somebody into writing me a check, and then opened a bank account with that. I mean, I literally did
perfect.
it all, you just just whack-a-mole, just one step at a time.
Yeah. So knowing all that and knowing here we are, it's what 17 years later. What are some of the things that you wish you had known when you started? What would have helped you succeed more quickly?
Yeah. Knowing something would have been great. Yeah, knowing anything would have been great. But I can tell you that some of my naivety um, was gave me some benefits. I'll tell you one quick story. So I had uh, this guy that pitched me this networking group to join. I was like, that sounds terrible. And if I'm going to turn into someone like him, I definitely don't want to go there. And then some time went by, and I thought, you know what? If I'm going to run a business, I think I have to know people. So I just started going to networking events and joined this group. And so the next thing that happened is somebody had coffee with me to kind of, sort of incorporate you into this group and give me advice and stuff like that. And she was also in the marketing field, and she says, um, "So how are you going to finance this business?" And I said, "I'm just going to charge people up front." And she laughed and said, "You're not going to have 30-day terms or anything like this." And I said, "No, I don't need to be anybody else's bank." And so because of that, ever since then, I've been charging people up front. And yeah, you get all of these different layers of flexibility when you have bigger clients, but I've always charged up front ever since then. But yeah, the what do I wish I knew? I wish I would have known all the three things you just told me.
That would have been great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would have been fabulous. But I might have waited longer to start the business, and I think that that's what the trade off would have been.
Well, that I think is the kind of the beauty of it. Even in the story you told, somebody asking you how you're gonna pay for the business, you're like, "Well, I'm gonna charge people up front."
Mhm.
Right? The only reason you decided to charge people up front at that point is because you didn't know any better.
Right.
Like, nobody had told you that you weren't allowed to charge people up front.
Yeah.
It is funny how successful people are when they just do what they don't know any better than.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that also the world has these conventions that we've agreed to because somewhere along the line somebody said, you know, you have to follow this rule. And there's a lot of good reasons for it sometimes. So there's a dotted line on this road they call the highway, and it's like everybody's staying on either side of the line, but it's an imaginary line. It's just paint.
Yeah.
So when somebody says, actually, I can kind of weave in and out of this based on other strategies, they might, either get in an accident or get there quicker. I don't know which, but yeah, the rules are sometimes just accepted because people are so used to them.
Yeah. Yeah. What when you think about, and I know you guys do this because, I've had conversations with you, but when you think about friends that come to you and say, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking about starting my own gig. I'm gonna leave Megacorp and I'm gonna do what you do." How do you
Mhm.
handle that conversation?
Um, well, you mean just any business,
It
uh,
it
or
yeah,
whatever you might feel?
it anything. I mean, somebody says, "I'm tired of working for this big Fortune 100 behemoth," and we were talking beforehand about the joys of working for a big company, and
Yeah.
somebody says, "I don't wanna do that anymore. I wanna be self-employed. I wanna be free and independent the way you are."
Hmm.
How
Uh,
how do you handle that?
yeah, I like to ask people what they mean by independent or what they're really looking for. Out of life because one of the things that you don't automatically get from business is you don't automatically have extra time and extra money and all these things. Like it is. I believe I haven't had everybody's experience, but I believe that it is always hard and sure, there's a way to get past the hard, um, but but yeah, sometimes what people want out of ownership is owning a business is just to say they own a business.
Yeah, which is the wrong reason to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So what the way I typically approach that, at least this has been on my mind a lot lately, is stop focusing on trying to acquire the title of founder and start focusing on uh, understanding a problem that you can solve and creating the way to solve it, whether it's a service or a product. If you can focus on the mission of solving some kind of problem, um, I think that it's probably more fulfilling, but it's certainly better, a better business. But it seems like so many people, even in the, just the ecosystem of businesses that I'm surrounded by, are so focused on, just the pride of being a founder, and it almost doesn't even matter what their business is.
Yeah. Kind of the wrong end of the problem that they're working on.
Yeah.
So, all right. So if 2025 Daniel could go back and sit down next to, 2008 Daniel and say, "Hey, listen, I'm coming at you from 17 years in the future. By the way, everything works out. You'll be fine. Everything, but tomorrow when you open the business, here's what you need to focus on first. What is the first thing that they should do?"
Yeah, I would rub little me on the back and tell him it's going to be okay. And I would
It'll be
say,
fine.
don't focus on creating jobs. Don't focus on creating jobs. Because one of the things that, when I started my first business, um, once I got past that stage of just ideating, and I was actually moving towards like a sustainable income, I always paid myself of the smallest amount of money possible and said, if I could just get enough revenue to hire this person and then this person. And then it was all about how do I keep these people and how do I maintain this, fabulous talent or whatever. And sometimes that wasn't even better for those people because I was focused on the wrong things. I was focusing, kind of on like it's similar to focusing on that title of founder. You're focusing on that idea of job creator instead of focusing more on the problem. And I guess embedded in that advice that I'm explaining to this guy that's probably not going to understand a word I'm saying, I would talk about more sound ways to fund the business because that's the job of an owner, of a CEO, of a founder of a business that's operating a business is identifying the most effective ways to fund the business. And I think the charging up front thing was a perfect strategy. It always worked, but then there were lots of mechanisms that came after that that I always picked up really well on ways to do it. But there were times that it was a little bit shooting from the hip, and I could have benefited from some good strategies.
Is there anything else you would tell somebody that's an aspiring or a new business owner? Help them
Um,
think about it?
I would like to be able to say, you know what, you can do it, but there are some people that just can't, or they don't want to accept the consequences of doing it. Um, but most of all, I think that um, when you are doing something that really is a reflection of what you're most passionate about, you're liable to be really interested in expanding your understanding of that topic. So, when you find yourself in that place, it is one of the greatest feelings that you can have in a professional space. And sometimes that the best place to find that flow or that moment, that experience of zen or whatever, however you want to describe it. Sometimes that's in a job, but yeah, I think that the best advice for a budding entrepreneur is focus on something that you love enough that you are happy to live and breathe it, because those are the best businesses, is the ones that are run by someone that just is enthusiastic about what they're doing.
Yeah, it's, well, Stephanie, Daly.
Hmm.
Um, her line was, "Don't start a business if you're not comfortable waking up and thinking about it at 3 AM."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that reminds me of another thought that I think that there's that period of time where you're in the startup stage where that's inevitable. You're gonna be thinking about it all the time. But there should be a stage where sleep is prioritized, because I think that we glamorize the hustle to the point where people give their whole life to the hustle and they never really live and focus on the things that they need as a human.
Well, that yes, that is true. There has to be more than just work.
And that's what I love about what I do now. I, you know, owned an agency for many years, owned and operated over the course of 20 years. I kind of sold it off and operated under another company for a while. But I, um, left to, go back out on my own again. And my whole goal was to be as lean as possible by essentially what I did is I narrowed my services to a much smaller scope to focus on essentially brand strategy, to put it simply. And that has allowed me to deliver more value for a client for um, in less time and less of my time, and therefore to have a much more full life without feeling like I'm grinding just to make a certain goal income number. So
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah. Well, just the idea that you could get to the point where you say no to more stuff
Mhm.
so that you can focus on something that you do very well and that you can go home and sleep after
Yeah.
is not a bad. All right, one final question before we go. If you were going to buy a moderately high-end bourbon, what would it be?
Well, if the listener is going to follow my advice, I would encourage them to buy something they can find that they like. But a great place to start with my taste is the Maker's Mark Stave Profile. What is that? Special Select. Um, it's a little higher end than your just general off the shelf Maker's Mark. A lot richer, a little higher proof, and it is incredibly tasty. And there's a lot of fuss about bourbons that are incredibly hard to find, that you got to hunt for, you got to pay extra for, and this one's just like a, a
It's on the
decent
shelf.
thing. It's on the shelf. You can buy it. You don't have to choke anybody for it, and it is fantastic. It's as good as any bourbon out there.
Perfect. Well, that's a quick 22 minutes. Some good fundamentals on starting a business and maybe doing it with more than 750 bucks in the bank.
Yeah. Well, $750 is a bigger number now.
It's true. All right. Hey, I want to remind everybody, if you want to learn any more about Daniel, you can go over to the show notes at defaultprofitable.com. We'll have that information in there. If you're listening, 3 ways you can help: hit subscribe, leave a review, or share an episode. Daniel, thanks again for being a guest.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Matt.
I appreciate it. Until next week, we'll be back with another episode of Default Profitable. Stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.